Imagine a world where the alliances that once defined global power no longer hold the same weight, where the familiar order, shaped by Western influence and NATO dominance, begins to crack under the rise of new partnerships. Pakistan's defense handshake with China and Turkey isn't just another headline about military cooperation. It's a seismic shift that signals a new era in global security. It's the story of how one nation, long treated as a junior partner in Western strategy, is rewriting its place in the world by forging bonds that challenge the very foundations of NATO's reach. The deepening defense ties between Pakistan and China represent a major shift in South Asia's strategic landscape and a growing challenge to NATO's influence in the region. Over the last decade, Pakistan has increasingly turned to China not just as a supplier, but as a long-term partner in defense production, technology sharing, and military modernization. This alliance has expanded far beyond traditional arms sales. It now includes the co-production of advanced weapon systems, joint development of aircraft like the JF-17 Thunder, and major naval cooperation such as the construction of submarines and frigates for Pakistan's navy. These projects give Pakistan access to cutting-edge Chinese defense technologies, including stealth designs, missile guidance systems, and air defense networks that were once primarily limited to China's domestic military use. By engaging in these ventures, Pakistan has gradually reduced its dependence on Western weapon systems, diversifying its procurement sources while strengthening ties with Beijing's military-industrial complex. China views this partnership as part of a broader geopolitical strategy. For Beijing, deepening defense cooperation with Pakistan ensures a reliable ally on India's western flank and enhances China's access to the Arabian Sea through projects like the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor (CPEC). The military dimension complements these economic and infrastructural investments, creating a comprehensive partnership that combines economic leverage with strategic depth. For Pakistan, this collaboration fills a critical gap left by the West's tightening export restrictions and its cautious stance on advanced military sales. After decades of fluctuating relations with the United States, Pakistan's shift toward China offers a sense of continuity and shared interest in counterbalancing India's growing alignment with the US and its allies. This growing dependency on Chinese technology, however, carries profound implications for NATO's broader strategic posture. NATO, which has historically relied on Pakistan for logistical access and counter-terrorism cooperation, now faces a scenario where a once cooperative partner is firmly embedded within China's security sphere. Every Chinese-built aircraft, missile, or ship that enters Pakistani service potentially extends Beijing's influence over South Asia's security matrix, granting it not only leverage but also valuable intelligence on regional defense capabilities. Moreover, as Pakistan begins to export Chinese origin systems, such as the JF-17, to countries like Myanmar and Nigeria, it indirectly spreads China's defense footprint globally. What once was a bilateral relationship has evolved into a multilateral chain of defense interdependence that challenges NATO's control over technology dissemination, alliance cohesion, and regional balance. The expanding military collaboration between Pakistan and Turkey is reshaping the defense dynamics of the Islamic world and has significant implications for NATO's cohesion and influence. What began as diplomatic camaraderie rooted in shared cultural and religious affinities has now evolved into a pragmatic partnership focused on joint production, technological exchange, and strategic alignment. Pakistan and Turkey are no longer just buyers and sellers in the arms market. They have become collaborators in developing indigenous military systems that combine Turkish innovation with Pakistan's industrial base and operational experience. This cooperation spans multiple domains, air, land, and sea, where both nations seek to complement each other's defense capabilities while minimizing reliance on Western suppliers. Turkish defense firms like Baykar and TAE have provided Pakistan with advanced drones, avionics, and combat helicopter technology, while Pakistan has offered engineering collaboration and manufacturing capacity. These joint ventures serve both nations' ambitions of achieving self-sufficiency in defense production, reducing their vulnerability to Western export restrictions, and expanding their global defense markets. Turkey's role in this partnership carries a complex undertone for NATO. As a long-standing NATO member, Turkey is expected to maintain alignment with the alliance's military standards, procurement guidelines, and strategic commitments. However, Ankara's deepening military ties with Pakistan, a non-NATO ally closely aligned with China, raise concerns about potential technology transfer and strategic leakage. Through Pakistan, Turkey gains indirect access to Chinese military advancements, particularly in missile technology, aircraft systems, and artificial intelligence-driven warfare tools. This triangular exchange, Turkey to Pakistan, Pakistan to China, creates an informal corridor of defense cooperation that lies outside NATO's control, potentially blurring the boundaries between alliance obligations and independent national interests. The increasing use of Turkish drones in Pakistan's military modernization program, for instance, not only enhances Islamabad's strike capabilities, but also signals Ankara's willingness to engage in arms diplomacy that may run counter to NATO's broader security preferences. Furthermore, the partnership has an ideological dimension that amplifies its strategic significance. Both nations have promoted a narrative of Muslim solidarity and mutual defense autonomy, framing their cooperation as an alternative model to Western dependence. Joint military exercises, shared defense exhibitions, and coordinated training programs have cemented this vision of a self-reliant Islamic defense bloc. The export potential of co-produced systems, such as drones and naval vessels, allows Turkey and Pakistan to position themselves as emerging arms suppliers to regions like the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia, markets traditionally dominated by NATO member states. This shift not only dilutes NATO's economic influence but also its geopolitical reach, as Turkey's dual role within and beyond NATO complicates alliance unity. The deepening Pakistan-Turkey military nexus, therefore, is not merely an industrial venture. It is a strategic recalibration that exposes NATO's vulnerability to internal divergence and the growing multipolarity of global defense cooperation. The implications of Pakistan's deepening defense cooperation with China and Turkey extend far beyond bilateral relations. They pose a direct challenge to the strategic architecture that NATO and its Western partners have long relied upon to maintain influence in South Asia and the broader Eurasian region. For decades, NATO's dominance in global defense planning was underpinned by a network of allies and partners that adhered to Western defense standards, technologies, and doctrines. Pakistan, though not a NATO member, once played a crucial supporting role in this system, serving as a logistical hub during the Cold War and the post-9/11 conflicts. However, as Islamabad reorients its strategic priorities toward Beijing and Ankara, NATO's traditional leverage over Pakistan's military orientation, procurement decisions, and operational coordination has eroded. The result is a vacuum where Western influence once existed and a growing space for non-NATO powers to shape defense trends in one of the world's most volatile regions. This shift is particularly alarming for NATO because it undermines the concept of interoperability, which is central to the alliance's military cohesion. Interoperability ensures that weapons, systems, and communications across allied forces are compatible, allowing for coordinated action during joint missions or crises. Pakistan's adoption of Chinese and Turkish military systems, ranging from drones and air defense networks to naval platforms, creates a new architecture that is not only outside NATO's technical sphere, but potentially incompatible with Western technologies. This incompatibility reduces the feasibility of future military cooperation between Pakistan and Western forces, limiting NATO's ability to project power or respond effectively to regional crises involving Pakistan's theatre of influence. Moreover, it fragments the flow of military intelligence and operational coordination that Western powers previously enjoyed through Pakistan's armed forces. Beyond technical concerns, the geopolitical implications are even more significant. As Pakistan aligns more closely with China, NATO faces the prospect of a strategic triangle where Beijing, Ankara, and Islamabad form a semi-aligned bloc that acts as a counterweight to Western dominance in defense markets and regional influence. This dynamic challenges the assumption that NATO's reach extends uncontested across Asia through diplomatic partnerships and defense cooperation. The presence of NATO-standard weapons in Turkey, combined with Chinese-origin technologies in Pakistan, could lead to complex scenarios where technologies, tactics, or operational insights cross boundaries that NATO cannot monitor or regulate. Furthermore, it creates uncertainty about Turkey's long-term role within NATO, as its collaboration with Pakistan provides it with avenues to pursue strategic independence from Western oversight. For NATO planners, this evolution marks the gradual weakening of a system that once allowed the alliance to manage both conflict and deterrence across continents. Replaced by an unpredictable multipolar defense landscape in which Western institutions no longer dictate the terms of engagement or alignment. Pakistan's foreign and defense policy is undergoing a profound transformation, reflecting a calculated shift toward multi-vector diplomacy and a diversified security posture. This recalibration is not accidental. It is a deliberate attempt to balance relations among major powers such as China, Turkey, the United States, and Russia, while preserving strategic autonomy in a highly polarized global order. Historically, Pakistan's alignment was tilted toward the West, particularly during the Cold War when it served as a frontline ally for Washington against Soviet influence. However, the post-9/11 era exposed the volatility of that dependence, as fluctuating U.S. aid, sanctions, and political conditionalities made Pakistan's military establishment wary of relying solely on Western partners. The growing mistrust, coupled with Washington's deepening defense ties with India, pushed Islamabad to diversify its alliances and build new pillars of support that could shield it from Western pressure. China's rise provided Pakistan with both an opportunity and a safety net. Through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, and growing defense cooperation, Beijing offered Pakistan economic investments, military technology, and diplomatic backing in global forums. This relationship gave Pakistan leverage it never enjoyed before: freedom from the conditionalities imposed by Western institutions and the ability to pursue its regional interests without excessive external interference. At the same time, Turkey emerged as a complementary partner, offering advanced drone and aerospace technology while sharing Pakistan's geopolitical grievances and aspirations. This partnership bridged the gap between the East and West, giving Islamabad a unique position where it could engage with both NATO and non-NATO blocs without being tied entirely to either. Pakistan's collaboration with Turkey also opened pathways to the broader Muslim world, where Ankara's growing influence provided Islamabad with diplomatic cover and access to alternative arms markets that reduced dependence on Western suppliers. This balancing act, however, goes beyond defense procurement. It represents a strategic rethinking of Pakistan's role in global geopolitics. Islamabad's engagement with Russia on energy and counterterrorism issues, along with its cautious re-engagement with Gulf nations, signals an emerging multi-alignment doctrine similar to those pursued by states like India and Turkey. The objective is to maximize national benefit through flexible partnerships rather than fixed alliances. Yet this approach poses a dilemma for NATO and the United States. Pakistan's simultaneous engagement with rival power blocs undermines the coherence of Western security policies in Asia, particularly as Islamabad can now maneuver between competing systems without severe repercussions. For NATO, this reorientation blurs the lines between partnership and neutrality. Pakistan's participation in Chinese-led military exercises, its technology exchanges with Turkey, and its selective cooperation with the US on counter-terrorism make it a geopolitical wildcard, neither adversary nor ally in the traditional sense. This evolution reflects the global trend toward multipolarity, where smaller and medium powers like Pakistan no longer see alignment with the West as the only path to security or development. Instead, they pursue multidimensional diplomacy that prioritizes national interests over ideological loyalties, reshaping the structure of international defense politics in ways that challenge NATO's long-standing strategic dominance. The defense agreements between Pakistan, China, and Turkey are not limited to weapons procurement. They mark the beginning of a new era of technological transfer, co-production, and independent arms export capability that directly challenges NATO's control over global arms standards and influence. Traditionally, the global defense industry was dominated by Western manufacturers, whose sales came with strings attached, restrictions on usage, export limitations, and political oversight. These mechanisms allowed NATO member states and their allies to maintain dominance over how military technologies were distributed and deployed around the world. However, Pakistan's engagement with China and Turkey is reshaping this dynamic. Both countries have offered Islamabad not only access to cutting-edge systems, but also the ability to manufacture and modify them domestically. This model represents a shift from dependency to empowerment, enabling Pakistan to build indigenous defense capacity and emerge as a regional arms supplier rather than a perpetual buyer. The co-production of aircraft like the JF-17 Thunder, the integration of Turkish drone technologies, and the anticipated collaboration on next-generation fighter jets are prime examples of this transformation. Through these initiatives, Pakistan is acquiring the technical know-how to design, assemble, and eventually export advanced weapon systems. For China, transferring technology to Pakistan serves its strategic interest of expanding its defense footprint and building reliable partners outside the Western system. For Turkey, the collaboration offers an opportunity to bypass Western export restrictions and market its military innovations through Pakistani channels. The synergy among these three nations creates a parallel defense ecosystem that operates beyond NATO's jurisdiction, undermining Western leverage in markets across Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. As Pakistan begins exporting JF-17s to countries such as Azerbaijan and Nigeria, and potentially offering Turkish-designed drones to other developing states, it effectively challenges NATO's monopoly over arms supply and reduces Western nations' ability to impose political conditions on buyers. This growing autonomy also grants Pakistan greater strategic freedom in foreign policy. By diversifying its defense suppliers and production lines, Islamabad reduces its vulnerability to sanctions or political coercion from Western powers. The shift also weakens NATO's ability to monitor end-user compliance and regulate the spread of sensitive technologies. Systems developed jointly by China, Turkey, and Pakistan are often produced under flexible export frameworks that allow them to reach markets previously inaccessible under NATO control. As these technologies evolve, especially in drones, missile systems, and cyber warfare tools, they are likely to proliferate in regions where Western influence is waning. This decentralization of arms production challenges not only NATO's strategic reach, but also its ability to set global norms for defense ethics, interoperability, and transparency. What emerges is a fragmented international arms environment in which multiple players, led by China and its partners, compete for dominance. In this environment, Pakistan's transformation from a dependent arms importer to an empowered defense collaborator signals a broader redistribution of power, one that erodes NATO's traditional authority over who arms the world, how weapons are used, and what political values underpin global security. The growing web of defense cooperation between Pakistan, China, and Turkey marks more than a regional adjustment. It represents a rewriting of the global strategic playbook. For decades, NATO dictated the flow of arms, the rules of engagement, and the structure of military influence. But now, that monopoly is slipping away. Pakistan's multi-directional alliances, supported by Chinese technology and Turkish innovation, are creating a new ecosystem where power is decentralized and autonomy replaces dependency. This realignment exposes NATO's vulnerability in regions it once dominated and forces it to confront a reality where emerging states no longer play by its rules. The balance of global defense is shifting, not through war, but through partnership, a partnership that redefines loyalty, sovereignty, and strategy in the 21st century. The question is no longer whether NATO can contain this transformation, but whether it can adapt to a world that refuses to be contained.